Brian Pedro Hendris and Sophia Elizabeth Hartwell. Request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. St. Mary's Cathedral. The blood in my veins turned to ice water as the reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. For years of believing I was his one and only. The card slipped from my numb fingers, fluttering to the hardwood floor like a dying butterfly. Behind me, I heard the front door open and close, followed by Brian's footsteps. He appeared in the bedroom doorway. I turned slowly, the wedding invitation clutched against my chest like evidence of a crime. Brian's eyes met mine, and for a moment, confusion flickered across his handsome face. What is this? Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video from. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. The ring wasn't much. But I didn't care about diamonds or gold. I cared about the promise it represented, the future we were building together, one day at a time. Brian was everything I'd never dared to hope for. Tall and confident, with dark hair that always fell perfectly across his forehead. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the world when he looked at me. We'd met 4 years ago when he'd wandered into Moonbeam during a particularly brutal rainstorm. He'd ordered a simple black coffee and sat by the window, scrolling through his phone with an intensity that made me curious. Not the polite customer service smile I was used to receiving. "You have beautiful eyes," he'd said simply. And I'd felt my cheeks burn with a blush that probably made me look like a tomato. A certain look, a gentle touch on your arm. The way he never wanted to talk about wedding dates, always saying, soon, or, when the time is right. The weekends when he'd disappear for work conferences, that seemed to happen awfully frequently. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? Love makes you explain away the inconsistencies, fill in the gaps with hope instead of logic. I told myself he was just private, just focused on his career. I told myself that when he was ready, when he felt secure enough financially, we'd have the wedding of my dreams. I'd make him coffee the way he liked it, with sugars, splash of cream, and pack him lunch in the expensive containers he preferred. My friends thought I was crazy. "Clara, you're basically his unpaid housekeeper," she'd say. I'd cleaned up dinner in silence while he made phone calls in his study, the door firmly closed. I should have known. God, I should have known. I woke up alone that Saturday morning, which wasn't unusual. Brian often got up early on weekends to go to the gym or handle work calls. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic from the street below. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long rectangles of gold across the polished hardwood floors. I stretched lazily, enjoying the luxury of sleeping in. My shift at Moonbeam didn't start until noon, which gave me plenty of time to tidy up the apartment and maybe surprise Brian with his favorite breakfast when he got back from wherever he'd gone. The kitchen was spotless. Brian was particular about cleanliness, and I'd learned early in our relationship that keeping his space immaculate was one of the ways I could show him I cared. That's when I saw it. A corner of white paper peeking out from beneath the far edge of the mattress, almost hidden by the bed frame. Instead, my fingers closed around thick, expensive cardstock, the kind of paper used for important announcements. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled it free, and for a moment, I felt a flutter of excitement. Brian Pedro Hendris and Sophia Elizabeth Hartwell. This wasn't our wedding invitation. This was someone else's. Some woman named Sophia Elizabeth Hartwell was marrying my Brian in 2 days, and I was just finding out about it by accident while cleaning his bedroom. My hands began to shake so violently that I nearly dropped the card. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood, hoping this was some kind of mistake or cruel joke. The ceremony was scheduled for Saturday, October 14th, at 2 p.m. Today was October 12th. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. How long had he been planning this wedding while lying to my face every single day? Had he been seeing her the entire time we'd been together? Had he been with her? Soon, he'd always said. The betrayal cut through me like a physical wound, sharp and deep and breathtaking in its cruelty. I'd given him everything, me time, my energy, my love, my trust. I'd turned down job opportunities that would have required me to move. And for what? I heard the front door open and close, followed by Brian's familiar footsteps in the hallway. He was back from wherever he'd gone, probably expecting to find me making breakfast or doing laundry like the dutiful girlfriend I'd always been. Instead, he was going to find me holding the evidence of his deception. The wedding invitation felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hands. The truth was out now, and there was no putting it back. You up yet? I brought coffee from that place you like. I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it had closed up completely. And even if I could have spoken, I wouldn't have known what to say. How do you confront someone about a betrayal this massive? How do you even begin to address a lie this elaborate? His expression shifted from casual affection to something I'd never seen before. He set the coffee cups down on his dresser with deliberate care, buying himself time to think. When he turned back to me, the mask had slipped completely. While I was cleaning. Like I always do. Like the good little girlfriend I've been for 4 years. Clara, listen. No, the word came out stronger than I'd expected. Brian's jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to explain, might offer some excuse or apology that could somehow make this make sense. Did you really think I'd marry someone like you? The words hit me like a physical blow. Come on, Clara. Be realistic. Look at this place. Look at my life. Did you honestly believe I'd tie myself down to a coffee shop girl who can barely make rent? But you said you loved me. You said. I said what you needed to hear. His voice was matter of fact, as if he were discussing the weather. I stared at him, this man I'd shared a bed with for 4 years, this man I'd planned my entire future around, and realized I'd never known him at all. Who is she? He straightened his shoulders, and I could see him slipping into the confident, successful persona he wore at work. And what am I? The smile that crossed his face was cruel and cold. The room spun around me. For years of believing I was building something real, something lasting. I loved you, I whispered, and hated how broken I sounded. No, you loved the idea of me. Brian moved to his closet and began pulling out clothes as if this conversation was already over. You loved the fantasy of marrying up, of escaping your little coffee shop life. But that was never reality, Clara. That was never going to be reality. I looked down at the wedding invitation still clutched in my hands, at the elegant script announcing his marriage to someone else, someone worthy, someone appropriate. Get out, he said without looking at me. I need to get ready. I have a bachelor party tonight. A bachelor party? At the threshold, I turned back one last time, hoping to see some flicker of remorse, some sign that our 4 years together had meant something to him. A life that had never included me as anything more than a temporary convenience. Clara, he called out just as I reached the hallway. I turned, hope fluttering stupidly in my chest. Leave your key on the kitchen counter on your way out. I don't remember leaving Brian's apartment or driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the floor of my tiny studio, still in my pajamas, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back that I was sick. The walls of my small apartment seemed to close in around me as the full weight of my situation hit. I was 26 years old, and I had nothing to show for the last 4 years except a broken heart and a pile of lies. The crying came in waves, each one more devastating than the last. I cried for the wedding I'd never have, for the future that had been stolen from me, for the naive girl who'd believed that love was enough. Angela's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. But I needed someone. Want to grab lunch? I'm craving those tacos from Clara. Are you crying? The concern in her voice broke something loose inside me, and the whole story came pouring out. That absolute piece of garbage. Angela, I'm so stupid. You tried to warn me and I wiped my nose with the back of my hand, feeling slightly less alone. What am I supposed to do now? He's getting married in 2 days, and I'm sitting here in my pajamas crying over a man who never loved me. Then, you're going to eat something. Then, we're going to figure out how to make him pay for what he did to you. Can't what? Can't stand up for yourself? Can't demand justice? Clara, this man stole 4 years of your life. He lied to you every single day. He made you believe you were building a future together while he was planning to marry someone else. You think you're just going to let him ride off into the sunset with his perfect bride while you sit here broken? Something in her voice sparked a flame in my chest. Small but growing stronger. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Brian Pedro Hendris is about to learn that actions have consequences. I'm suggesting that his perfect wedding day might not go exactly as planned. The flame grew brighter. Angela, I can't crash his wedding. That's crazy. Is it? Is it crazier than what he did to you? Clara, this man destroyed you. He threw away 4 years of your life like it meant nothing. He called you a coffee shop girl like that was something to be ashamed of. He made you feel small and worthless and disposable. Each word hit home, stoking the fire that was building inside me. Was she as clueless as I'd been? Or was she complicit in this deception? I need to think about this, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I could feel my resolve hardening. Don't think too long, Angela said. The wedding is in 2 days. If we're going to do something, we need to move fast. Brian's words echoed in my head. You're the kind of woman a man like me keeps around until he finds someone better. Clayton, it's Clara. I need your help with something, and it's going to sound crazy, but I need you to trust me. By the time I finished explaining the situation, my brother's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. No, you're not. But you are going to help me make sure his wedding day is one he'll never forget. Whatever you need, sis. Whatever you need. I called Angela back, then my cousin Stephanie, then my friend Ben from work. Because I was going to face him again. Not as the broken, humiliated woman who'd left his apartment that morning, but as someone who refused to be discarded without a fight. The wedding was in 2 days. St. Mary's Cathedral stood like a fortress of white stone against the October sky. Its Gothic spires reached toward heaven as if seeking divine blessing for the union about to take place within its walls. Expensive cars, the kind that spoke of old money and established families. Mercedes, BMWs, a few Teslas, and even a Bentley parked near the front steps. I sat in Angela's Honda Civic across the street, watching the guests arrive in their designer dresses and tailored suits. His real people. I'm sure, I said, though my hands were shaking as I checked my reflection in the visor mirror one last time. I'd spent the last 2 days preparing for this moment. A navy blue sheath dress that was simple but elegant, paired with heels that made me 3 inches taller and infinitely more confident. A few strategic phone calls to mutual acquaintances, some careful social media stalking, and a conversation with Brian's chatty neighbor had given me everything I needed to know about Sophia Elizabeth Hartwell and her family. She was beautiful in the way that money can make you beautiful. She was also, according to her Instagram account, completely unaware that her fiancé had been living with another woman for the past 4 years. Ben from work was stationed outside with his camera, ready to document whatever happened next. We've got your back, Clayton said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. He had no idea that chapter wasn't over yet. She looked happy, genuinely, completely happy. But then I remembered Brian's words. Sophia deserved to know what kind of man she was marrying. And Brian deserved to face the consequences of his lies. The sanctuary was even more impressive than I'd expected. Soaring ceilings, stained glass windows that cast rainbow patterns across the stone floor, and enough flowers to stock a small garden center. The guests were seated in neat rows, their attention focused on the altar where Brian stood waiting. He looked handsome in his black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his posture confident and relaxed. This was his moment, his perfect day, his carefully orchestrated transition from one life to the next. I slipped into a pew near the back, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Clayton took the seat on my other side, his jaw clenched with barely controlled anger. The music changed, signaling the start of the processional. Bridesmaids in pale pink dresses began their slow walk down the aisle, followed by flower girls scattering rose petals. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her arm linked with her father's. She had no idea that her perfect day was about to become a nightmare. The music stopped abruptly. Heads turned in my direction, confusion rippling through the crowd like a wave. Sophia paused halfway down the aisle, her brow furrowed as she tried to understand what was happening. For a moment, our eyes met across the crowded sanctuary, and I saw fear flicker in his gaze. Good. And for the past 4 years, I've been living with the groom. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd prepared. These are pictures of us together at his apartment, the apartment where I've been living, cooking his meals, doing his laundry, and planning our wedding for the past 4 years. I held up the phone, showing a selfie of Brian and me from just last month. It was one of dozens of similar photos I had, documenting a relationship that Brian was now trying to pretend had never existed. He told me we were going to get married, I continued, my voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. You want to know what he said when I confronted him? I asked, turning to address the crowd directly. He said I was just a coffee shop girl who wasn't good enough for him. He said I was convenient. He said I was the kind of woman a man like him keeps around until he finds someone better. The sanctuary erupted in whispers and shocked exclamations. Others were standing up, preparing to leave this disaster of a wedding. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because you deserve to know the truth about the man you're about to marry. You deserve to know that he's been lying to both of us. Is it true? She whispered, but her question wasn't directed at me. The confident, successful man I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone who looked small and desperate and caught. Brian, Sophia's voice was stronger now, carrying clearly through the silent cathedral. He stood at the altar in his perfect tuxedo, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, filled only by Sophia's quiet sobs and the distant sound of traffic from the street outside. Sophia, I can explain. Explain how you've been living with another woman while engaged to my daughter. Explain how you've made a mockery of our family. Mr. Hartwell, please, if you'll just listen. Security. I want this man removed from my daughter's wedding immediately. But before anyone could move, Brian's panic took over completely. You can't do this to me, he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. She's lying. She's a crazy ex-girlfriend who can't accept that it's over. She's trying to ruin my life. His voice echoed off the stone walls, desperate and shrill. She was elegant in the way that only comes with old money and good breeding, and she carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Mother? Brian's voice cracked like a teenager's. Mrs. Hendricks, Brian's mother, whom I'd never met in 4 years of dating her son, walked slowly down the aisle, her heels clicking against the stone floor. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, Brian. Ever since I found out about this wedding from the society pages. My dear, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. But yes, everything this young woman has said is true. My son has been living with her for years. I've seen the pictures on his social media, though he was always careful not to tag her or mention her name. Brian's face went from white to green. Mother, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Mrs. Hendricks's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption, but I cannot in good conscience allow this ceremony to proceed. My son has committed emotional fraud against both of these women. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Brian, you might be interested to know that I've spent the last month having you investigated. Professional curiosity, you might say. After I started noticing discrepancies in your stories. Brian's face went ashen. I'm talking about the forged documents, also taking money from my account without my knowledge. The falsified expense reports, the client accounts you've been skimming from. Sophia's father stepped forward, his face thunderous. What is she saying, Brian? I'm saying, Mrs. Hendricks continued, that my son is not only a liar and a cheat, but also a thief. And I'm saying that I've already turned all the evidence over to the authorities. You called the police on your own son? Sophia's mother gasped, her hand pressed to her chest. This is insane, he shouted. Tell them what, Brian? Sophia's voice was quiet but deadly. She stood up slowly, her wedding dress rustling around her like armor. Tell them that I want to marry a man who's been living with another woman. Tell them that I want to spend my life with someone who's been stealing money from his own mother and business clients and lying to everyone who trusted him. When she reached the altar, she looked up at him with eyes that held no trace of the love that had been there just minutes before. Tell me something, Brian, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent cathedral. Did you ever love me, or was I just another convenient arrangement like Clara was? Sophia nodded slowly, as if confirming something she'd already suspected. Then, without warning, her hand flew through the air and connected with his cheek in a slap that echoed off the stone walls like a gunshot. Then she slapped him again, even harder. And that's for me. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and theft. You have the right to remain silent. As the officer read Brian his rights, the cathedral began to empty. Others simply eager to escape the scandal that would undoubtedly be front-page news in tomorrow's society papers. I stood frozen in my pew, watching as the man I'd loved for 4 years was handcuffed and led away. Clara? Sophia's voice was soft, and I turned to find her standing beside my pew. Her wedding dress was wrinkled now, her veil askew, her makeup streaked with tears. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. She shook her head. She paused, studying my face. 4 years. 4 years, she repeated, her voice filled with wonder and horror. 4 years of your life wasted on him. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, too, I said. What will you do now? Sophia asked. Sophia nodded. Me, too. We'd painted the walls a warm sage green, added comfortable seating areas, and expanded the menu to include fresh pastries that I baked every morning. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Sophia walk in. She'd become a regular customer over the past few months, and what had started as awkward encounters had gradually evolved into something resembling friendship. Actually, make it 2, she said, smiling. I have news. So, I said, settling into my chair. After the wedding disaster, Sophia had taken some time to figure out what she really wanted to do with her life, rather than what her family expected her to do. What about you? She asked. Any word on the business loan? I grinned. Approved. Angela and I are going to open a second location downtown. It had taken months of planning and paperwork, but we were finally ready to expand. The new cafe would be bigger, with space for live music and community events. It was everything I'd dreamed of but had never dared to pursue while I was waiting for Brian to decide my future for me. I'm so proud of you, Sophia said, and I could tell she meant it. His mother had testified against him at the trial, her testimony delivered with the same cold precision she'd shown at the cathedral. She'd visited me once, a few weeks after his sentencing, to apologize for her son's behavior and to thank me for having the courage to speak up. I shook my head. No, and I don't want to. That chapter of my life is closed. It was true. But anger was exhausting, and eventually, I'd chosen to channel that energy into building something better. Nothing serious yet, but I was learning to trust my instincts and to value myself enough to walk away from anyone who didn't treat me with respect. I'd reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I discovered that I was actually quite good at running a business, at making decisions, at being the protagonist of my own story instead of a supporting character in someone else's. I should go, Sophia said, checking her watch. I have a million things to do before the move. Same to you if you're ever in Portland, she replied. After she left, I stood at the window, watching her walk down the street, her steps confident and purposeful. We'd both emerged from Brian's deception stronger and more self-aware than we'd been before. How'd it go with the loan officer? She asked. We got it, I said, unable to keep the grin off my face. We did it. We actually did it. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone I'd known once but had outgrown. His betrayal had shattered the small, safe world I'd built around his approval, forcing me to discover who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted. Regulars who knew my name, who asked about my day, who'd become part of the community we'd built here. Not the life I'd planned when I was 22 and thought love meant sacrifice, but the life I'd chosen when I learned that real love meant growth. My phone buzzed with a text from Clayton. Somehow, in the fog of first love, I'd forgotten those lessons. But I remembered them now. Not the desperate, clinging happiness that depended on someone else's choices, but the deep, steady contentment that came from building a life I was proud of. But he'd been wrong about that, just as he'd been wrong about so many things. He'd thought I was the kind of woman who would disappear quietly when she was no longer wanted. Instead, it had been the beginning of his downfall. And me? As I locked up the cafe that night, I caught my reflection in the window. She was everything the scared, heartbroken girl from 6 months ago had never dared to dream she could become. And that, I realized as I walked home through the spring evening, was the best revenge of all. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue sharing these tales of transformation.